If somebody understands what the impact of technology is in the state of Florida, Alex Zink is a great person to talk about it. Let's give her a round of applause.
Those woohoos are coming from our Wave startup founders, right? But just so you all will know, because when we take a break, would our startup founders please just hold your hands up. So see these guys, be sure you talk to them because we are really proud of what they're doing. So, thank you. Can you hear me now? Florida's a land of dreams. Think about what brought you here, or your parents, or your grandparents. And it's always been that way. As I was driving in this morning, I thought about Florida being the land of dreams, starting with the native Floridian Indians who made their homes here and found an abundance of food and fish and hunting. But think about Ponce de Leon, who was the first European to come in search of gold. And while he didn't find gold here in Florida, he found tons of other opportunity. And then we fast forward to today, and we know that people like Dr. Kiran and Pallavi Patel came to Florida to fulfill their dream of building a hugely, many hugely successful businesses. So let's set the context of Florida being a land of dreams and go back and think about the 20th century Florida and how we developed as a state. So a short history lesson: Florida wouldn't be Florida today unless John Gorey had developed and figured out a way to provide air conditioning. So that was one of our first big steps, was the discovery of air conditioning. Then World War II came along, and because there was mostly empty land here in Florida, the military getting ready to do training to get our soldiers prepared for World War II, established Pensacola and right here MacDill and the Air Force Base here and many other military installations, which brought all these young soldiers to have the Florida experience. And guess what? After World War II, many of them remembered what a pleasant environment and climate and how beautiful Florida was, so they began to move their families to Florida. Then let's think about another really important fact of Florida history is the interstate highway system. And you're thinking, well, how does that apply? Well, think about this. I-95 made it easy for all of those northerners from the East Coast, from New York, from Massachusetts, from Pennsylvania, to just hop on that interstate and drive with their families down to Florida, maybe first for vacation and then realizing that it would be a nice place to live. And likewise, on our side of the state, Interstate 75 brought all the Midwesterners down to the West Coast. And to this day, we find that the West Coast of Florida is a little more Midwestern in orientation. The East Coast of Florida is still a little bit more New England, Northeastern orientation. And all the dreams that came with all of those people. And then the last thing I'll mention, we could mention 10 other things, would be the importance of the Kennedy Space Center, because that leads to bringing that wealth of engineering talent, technical talent, and that hub became for so many decades a place where we began to attract incredible engineering and technology talent, and out of that, our university system, University of Florida, University USF, and all of our other universities began to develop incredible engineering programs, which provides talent for us here today. So that's my history lesson of the 20th century. But then here we are in the 21st century, and we recognize that in the early part of the 21st century, Florida I call it, we were first in and last out of a huge, incredible recession. And it caused a lot of people to sit back and think about how do we grow Florida for the 21st century? We can't be just the tourist state and the real estate development state, and we can't be just the agriculture state. We have to build ourselves a new economy. And that's where we are today. And it's so exciting to see the change that has been made in the last 10 years and how rich what we call our entrepreneurial ecosystem has become. So, right here in Tampa, a group of just fledgling tech fans as volunteers got together 10 years ago and became the Tampa Bay Wave. And just because there were people that, again, moved here to follow their dreams, but they didn't find the infrastructure and the systems set up to really support what their dreams were. And out of that came the Wave. With their first federal grant, $1 million, they applied for this grant randomly, not having any idea that they would get it. Now, let me also say this federal grant came out of the depths of the recession when the Obama administration, remember, passed this controversial TARP bill, billions of dollars to kind of get things moving again all over the country. And a piece of that was to increase the building of technology and technology communities. And this grant enabled the Wave to hire some people, to have a staff, to set up an incubator right here in the heart of Tampa. And you're going to hear from some of our startup founders later today. But at the same time, so we began to kind of help our companies get started, but then eventually they need capital. And so that's where we realized that we also have to build, once we have the companies to offer up, where are they going to get sources of capital to grow and scale their businesses? And I just want to thank Ty so much for setting up a formalized angel network to be able to start investing in some of our more promising companies. 70% of the venture capital in this country is raised out of Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Boston, New York. Just 4 places, 70%. 2% of venture capital comes out of Florida. Yet we know that we're an incredibly wealthy state. We have hundreds of thousands of accredited investors in the state of Florida. And our challenge going forward is to educate and expose those accredited investors who tend to be, we understand real estate, we understand tourism, we're not so sure about this technology stuff. And so we have a big education job in front of us to be able to educate investors that what are the statistics, what are the returns that you can expect, and by the way, from my perspective, it's just a hell of a lot of fun to see my companies grow and thrive, you know, and sometimes my companies don't make it. They have to call me up and say, we can't go any further. We're going to shut the doors. But to me, that's okay. I understand that because what we want is for that entrepreneur who might have had a failure to be able to just pick themselves up, learn what they learned from their unsuccessful business, and start another one. And we've learned a lot about the country of Israel because they're known as the startup nation. And in Israel, literally, I've been there twice. I've been exposed to their startup culture. If you haven't started a business and failed, then you just haven't, you know, you're not going to make it because you've got to learn from your failures. So it's just incredible amount of fun. And I want to just finish up by saying a little bit about the lay of the land here in Tampa because there's a lot of confusion around who does what. And the word of the day is collaboration. And because you heard Suha say that we're a small community, that's an advantage for us because we all know each other and we can talk to each other and we can communicate and we can be sure that we're working together for a collaborative purpose as opposed to at cross purposes. So, for example, we have several incubators in the community. The Tampa Bay Wave is just one incubator, but it's also very important that USF and University of Tampa are running student incubators, because that is going to feed those incubators with those students where they can be in a safe learning environment, are going to feed our other incubators like the Wave and like Tech over in St. Petersburg, and FIBA, the Florida Israeli Business Accelerator. And the more the merrier. That's the way we at the Wave look at it. The more the merrier. We need to produce companies so that you, who are investors, have lots of choices and lots of options to pick and choose what kind of captures your own dream and your own imagination. So there's the incubator piece of it. There's also, as I mentioned, the university piece of it, to do research, to develop ideas. Rich led a team up to Gainesville a few months ago. We've had 7 companies move, some of the companies in this room, 7 companies have moved, started up as students in Gainesville and realized that we in the Tampa community can provide more connections, more access to investors, so they've moved here. So we don't want to compete with Gainesville and steal their businesses necessarily, but we want to collaborate with them. We want to, Samir will tell you about the importance of getting started there and having access to the engineers and the technicians that helped him develop his software for his very exciting company. So we're really committed to collaborating with the people in Gainesville and bringing them in as part of our ecosystem, for example. And we also recognize that part of what we have to do is develop this investor network. So at the Wave, for example, Alan Clary has just come on board to specialize in a new function we're calling investor relations. Alan's going to be out there gathering together people who are interested in investment. But I think one of the critical things that has happened here is the establishment of some funds, like Florida Funders, like seed funders. Dave Chittister, who started Florida Funders, he's very much a pre-revenue kind of guy. He's out there looking for the next great new idea and getting people to invest in those very, very early stage companies that, granted, are higher risk, but Dave's been at it a long time, so I'm really confident. And other angel networks like TiE. So I think that we're just at the cusp of an incredible opportunity to see Tampa put itself on the map as one of those major second-tier cities. And one of the first indications, stay tuned, on May the 1st of this year, Steve Case, the founder of AOL, started a nonprofit called Rise of the Rest, ROTR, Rise of the Rest, because he believes that there are many other wonderful ideas in the rest of the country other than those 4 cities. And they have selected Tampa as one of their stops on a Rise of the Rest bus tour. They'll be coming through here on May the 1st. I know you'll be hearing more about it. And at the end of they've called for a pitch competition. They're going to choose 8 companies who get to pitch. And at the end of the day, Rich, I believe it's a $100,000 prize that they're going to offer. So here we are. There's so much excitement ahead. But just let me go back and just have each of you think in your own mind about that statement I started out with. Florida's the land of dreams. We all came here to fulfill a dream. And that's what we're all doing here today. Thank you.